Hi, welcome to BC Ghost Towns. I'm John Mitchell and I'm here with Val Carey. We're actually sitting in the Walhachin's community hall. And Val has been very nice to talk to us a little bit about Walhachin. She actually lives in one of the original houses just across the street. And you were telling me that your folks purchased
in 1935.
In 1935.
Yes, they paid $125 for it.
And it's an original house?
It's an original house built in 1913 for a Mr. Benny. And as I understand the situation, Mr. Benny purchased the house from England, and then he was off to India. He sent his family over here, and he was going to join them later, but then he was killed in India.
Oh.
Yes, so he apparently never actually saw his house.
But so his family resided here for a number of years, I assume?
Yeah.
And were they the ones that in fact sold it to you?
No, someone from a ranching family, it's my understanding from my family that someone named Lehman had owned the house. So someone had bought it after the British settlers left.
Okay, so really Walhachin never really was a totally deserted town?
No, it never was. Actually, before Europeans came here, there were people living in the area, and to the east and south of Walhachin is a pit house ring near Jimmy's Creek.
So natives were here.
Yeah, so there have been people living here for a very long time. And then there was someone put together a ranch, and it was this ranch that Charles Barnes, who was sort of the founder of Walhachin, he saw this ranch and he saw a small orchard that had been growing for quite a few years there. Right. And then he envisioned this as an orchard community, and he approached the British Columbia Development Association in London, and the people he talked to there saw it as a perfect opportunity, particularly for a place for the second and third sons of the aristocracy to come and live. So this wasn't just an agricultural community, it was a place for the aristocracy to send their sons, the remittance men. Although I don't think they were all remittance men, but certainly some of them.
Yeah, the remittance men were here basically for fun. They got the money from England. And they weren't just here, they were all over. They were in the Okanagan and stuff like that. Yeah. What would you say was the lowest point for Walhachin that you would know about? Like,
there was always people living here working for the railroads. And working in the agricultural field. After most of the British left, there were some that stayed on. And in fact, there was one fellow whose mother had bought him land. His nickname was Socks. Socks Darney, I love the name. Socks
Good English
Darney.
Name, yeah.
Yeah, and Socks Darney's mother bought him a piece of land here. And he was too young to come at the time that the British settlement was being developed, but he came later and worked his land for a few years and then sold it. And his daughters were here for our centennial, and we still have contact. He stayed in BC. Yeah.
So I understand that the people, and there was a few Canadians amongst the Englishmen here, but that they didn't really get along well with the neighbors.
No, because their attitude was that these people were, the inferiors, the colonials, and they had this superior attitude that they knew best how to do things. Now there are those who would just go right up the wall, and we'd have to scrape them off the ceiling for what I'm saying. But this is my very clear understanding that was one of the major problems, was that because these people were aristocrats, they didn't see the locals as being equals, and therefore they didn't see the locals as having useful information for them. So that was one of the problems with the flume. Now that was an amazing feat to build a flume to bring water from 22 miles away.
Up the Deadman's
Creek,
Wow.
And but they wouldn't listen to anybody telling them, for example, not to build it in one continuous. They were advised to build it in sections. And of course, they knew better. So they built it as one continuous. And during the First World War, there was a flash flood, and it broke and twisted the flume for several miles. Right. And the government of the day refused to give Lord Anglesey any money to repair it. So there was the end of the flume and of the a major source of water.
So that really diminished mostly what was on the north side of the Thompson.
Yeah.
It killed that first.
Yeah. Although the water also came across, there was a pipe. They built a wooden pipe actually.
But yeah, and I understand when it was full of water, it would sag down. It wasn't particularly a great engineering feat, although the siphon did manage to get the water over here.
Yeah.
The two creeks that were tapped for this side of the river just really didn't produce enough water.
Right.
Twin Lakes and stuff like that.
Twin Lakes and Jimmy's Creek, yeah.
Now, do you know if the town suffered from the Spanish influenza that hit around right after the war?
I hadn't heard anything about that. So I'm assuming that wasn't the case. And perhaps because the soldiers, most of them didn't come back here.
Yeah, isn't that sad?
Yeah, they didn't come back here. They went elsewhere, or of course they were gone.
Well, when you joined the war in 1914, it wasn't just do 2 years of service and then go home. They were there for the duration, and from 1914, they were in the thick of the war for 4 years. I would imagine that probably only 4 or 5 out of 10 would have survived.
Yeah, and the ones that survived just simply didn't come back.
Yeah.
Received the Victoria Cross in Walhachin.
Oh,
Gordon Flowerdew, he had the most wonderful name, Gordon Muriel Flowerdew. And he was a merchant here. He wasn't one of the remittance men. He was a merchant. Mm-hmm. And he was a butcher as well. And he had a store here. And of course, he was also part of the British Army, as they all were.
Right.
And off he went to war. And he led one of the last cavalry charges into machine guns. And he was fatally wounded at the Battle of Muriel Wood, which, according to some accounts at the time that I read, was actually one of the key battles in ending World War I.
So it's something very much to be proud of.
This hall that we're sitting in here is Walhachin Soldiers Memorial Hall. And it was so named in the 30s, partly for a practical reason, because nobody could pay the taxes. And once something is a war memorial, then there's no taxes. And also as a remembrance of the men that went marching off to World War I.
Well, Walhachin is still alive and vibrant. It seems it had a high of 140 people and probably has how many people today?
Last time I counted was 65.
65 people.
Yeah. We lost our post office a few years ago. So we have the railway, quite a few years ago, tore out all their facilities because there was a station and housing for the employees and so forth, and that's all gone. There was a Y here because in the days of the steam engines, they would bring trains up with a pusher, and then the pusher would turn around the Y and go back down.
Because of the hills.
Yeah. There never was a church here. It is endlessly fascinating to me that the British settlers never built a church.
It's as I walk down the streets here, it's nice to see that Walhachin is in every likelihood of being here another 100 years.
I would think so.
Yeah,
I see no reason
and I
why
see
not.
with the passion that you have in the local residents that I'm very confident that somebody like myself and like yourself will sit here in this hall 100 years from now and discuss it.
Yes, and I wish I could just hop in my time machine and have a peek at the 200th celebration of Walhachin. Because we had a wonderful time here at the 100th anniversary. We had 2 men who were born in Walhachin, one in 1927, one in 1935. And the 1935 fellow was delivered by my grandmother in the Walhachin station. So
wow, that must have been heartfelt.
Oh, it was just really wonderful. Really, really exciting.
Well, I'm ready to schedule the next time there's a big dance here. I'm going to bring my dancing slippers and I'm going to try and fill my dance card.
All right.
Thank you very
Okay.
much for a wonderful talk
Well,
here in the
thank you for
Walhachin
coming
Community
by.
Center.
All
Thank you,
right
Val.
on.
Love and light return with thee and swallow